Hello and welcome to Stanchion Snacks, a bit of a mouthful, the cooking show where I attempt to create a match day snack for every Southampton game this season. Now, quick disclaimer, due to my current work schedule, I'm actually at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe at the moment. I've actually recorded the first 3 of these videos in advance, so I've got no idea how we got on against Wrexham on the first day of the season. So, second game of the season, a first away game, and a game that I'm gutted to be missing out on because I have never actually been to Portman Road is, of course, Ipswich. And anyone that watched the previous video will know that this will be a dish that involves an ex-player of both Southampton and Ipswich Town. And boy, are there a few to choose from today. Now, I've had to write all of these down because since 1992, there's a whopping 18 players that have played for both Southampton and Ipswich Town. So here we go. Leon Best, Bartosz Biolski, James Bree, who is, of course, still with us at time of recording, Richard Chaplow, Kelvin Davis, Flynn Downs, Ryan Fraser, both still at the club, Dan Harding from the previous promotion season, Danny Higginbottom, Stern John, Jim Magilton, Maitland Niles, Chris Making. Now, I've got to admit, I don't remember Chris Making. Alex McCarthy, obviously still there. Fraser Richardson, Jermaine Wright, who was famously Ian Wright's cousin, and Richard Wright, no relation whatsoever. So I have chosen to cook a dish today inspired by... Where is he? There he is. Bang! Jim Magilton! Now, Jim Magilton is, of course, from Belfast, Ireland. So today I had a bit of a toss-up as to either I was going to create an Ulster fry, like a proper full sort of fried breakfast, or a Belfast bat, which is basically all of those things, but in a bat. And that is what I'm going to create for you guys today. But I wouldn't be able to do a cookery program about Ipswich without channeling apple cider. So the first thing that we're going to get on, which is a little bit left field and you wouldn't traditionally have on a like an Ulster fry or a Belfast bat, is I've just sliced up some white onion there, nice and fine, and I'm going to pour on some of this lovely apple cider, just enough to sort of maybe coat the cover the top of the onions, and then just a little pinch of salt in there, and I'm going to leave that on a nice low heat for the whole time really, and they should go down nice and sort of nice and sticky. So they're on there now. I've started them off quite high, but I will turn them down. This, of course, also gives me the opportunity to sample some of this apple cider. I've never actually had apple in a can before, but it's all I could find. So cheers, my lovely people. Now, the next thing I'm going to get on are the mushrooms, which again are a little bit more unusual. I'm just going to start off with a little bit of rapeseed oil in a pan there. And then I have some chestnut mushrooms, which did have an Irish, a little Irish logo on the packet. So I'm going to keep these quite big, I think. I'm just going to sort of cut them maybe into halves. And at this point, I'm just going to put a little knob of butter into this pan. Only a little bit because I will be adding more butter later on. So I'm just adding that just to almost control the heat, add a little bit of extra flavour. And I'm going to put these mushrooms sort of cut side down straight into the pan. And I'm not adding any salt, which is very important, and you'll see why a little bit later on. So there we have our mushrooms just sort of sizzling away there like that, and I'll just leave them there. Again, I'm going to turn that down quite low. And the other thing that I'm going to add at this point is I'm just going to grate a little bit of garlic in, and I will do this using a microplane. Now, if you don't have a microplane, I really do recommend getting one. It will change your life. I'm just going to This is maybe sort of less than half, so perhaps a quarter or a third of a garlic clove, and that's just going to sit on there like that. So that's our first two components on, and I'd like to say they're the most difficult, but the next one is probably the easiest, but it's the one that we could not have a Belfast bat without, and that is, of course, a potato fowl. So a potato fowl is basically mashed potato with some flour added into it. So if you know how to make mashed potato, you can skip the next little bit, but if not, here's my 1 minute mashed potato masterclass. Step 1. Get a potato. Peel said potato. Cut potato into even-sized pieces. This is important. Not too small. Wash potatoes. Cover with cold water. Be generous. Spill a little bit on the floor if you have time. Season water. I only use Maldon's. Taste the water. It tastes salty. That's great. So you stir the potatoes as they're cooking. This will make sure that they cook evenly. Keep stirring. If it falls off the knife, it is cooked. That's a hot handle. Only steamy. Back into dry pan. Just letting some of any excess sort of water disappear. And now I'm going to give it a whack with one of these. You can use a ricer or a sieve or anything you like, but I'm a fan of good old elbow power. And if you've cut your potatoes nice and evenly and cooked them nicely, they'll be very easy to mash. And because you've been stirring them and they've cooked consistently, you don't have any wet bits, you don't have any hard bits. And for a fowl, that'll do. If we were going for a Michelin star, we would probably put it through a ricer, but we're not. So there we go. So I have allowed my mashed potato to cool down, and I've changed my board here. So I've now got a little marble top, and this is about 200 grams. So I've just weighed this out once I've mashed it of mashed potato. And at this point, I will just have a little taste. The seasoning is actually pretty good. It's so important to season your water as you're making your mashed potato. And then you don't really need to season it much at all. Just a little sprinkle of Maldon's there for good measure. And then we've got about 50 grams of flour and a tiny little sort of, again, maybe a sort of a quarter of a teaspoon of baking powder. And we're just going to work this now into a dough. And I'm just kind of thinking about what shape I really want to cut these out. They're going to go in a bat, so I mean, we could just do almost two really big ones. Really, we'll see. Maybe I could use a ring. Ring will be too small. Traditionally, you would cut this into like a triangle. So I think maybe that is what I'm going to do. And then maybe they'll just kind of be sticking out of the back a little bit. Time for a bit more cider. Now my mushrooms have started to come up to quite a high heat. Normally you always cook mushrooms very slowly, but now as the pan's nice and hot, I'm going to add a bit of soy sauce just to almost deglaze the pan. And that's going to go quite nice and sticky. And then just as that's cooking down, I'm going to add another knob of butter. So we get this nice, sticky, sort of mushroomy glaze. And I'm actually just going to let those cook down, and then I'm going to transfer them to something else because I want to use this pan to cook my fowls in. So I'm just going to get a little medium heat on the pan here. A little bit of oil. And the other thing I've got is a hot tray that we're going to put in the oven. We will come back to this. So medium to high heat, we're just going to take these fowls. I think for now I'm just going to cook two of these straight into the pan. Give that the same amount of time on the other side. So there's our fowls cooked beautifully on both sides now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place them onto this tray, just have a little rest for a few moments, because we're going to kind of do everything in this one pan. So I'm going to put that back on the heat. And I have, this is a great little tip from a chef friend of mine called Phil, actually, who is an Ipswich fan. I'm just going to put this sort of empty butter packet on there. So it's still got a bit of the residue of butter. They'll stay warm, and then last minute we'll give them a little flash through the oven before we go. Now it's time to start talking about our meat. So we've got our mushrooms on, we've got our potato fowls on, our onions. We will do an egg at the very last minute. But meat-wise today, I've got a little bit of black pudding and I've got some sausages. So I'm just going to actually start the black pudding off in the pan now. That's nice and hot, a little bit more oil. So I'm just going to give that a nice little sear. And whilst that's cooking, we will prepare these sausages. Now, I want this to be quite like a solid bap. I don't want it to sort of fall apart. Oh, there's the fire alarm, people. So there we go, we can safely say black pudding sets off the fire alarm. Luckily I've got a little assistant back there that has just turned that off. So yeah, I want this to be quite a solid bap. I want it to hold together, I don't want it to fall apart. And I think one of the things that makes that happen is the sort of squishiness of the sausages. So, I don't eat a lot of meat, and there won't be a huge amount of meat cooked on this channel, but when there is, it will come from the best possible sauces, and that's kind of how I've always lived my life. So if you can't go to like your local butcher, or in Shropshire I normally go to Maynard's for all of my pork, but if you're in a supermarket, go to the best one you can find. And I'm just taking the skins off these because we're basically going to make a little pork patty so that it holds together nicely. The sort of words that you're looking for when you're shopping is outdoor bread. If it's got outdoor bread on it, you know it's going to be pretty good. So I've just taken those out the skins, just formed it into a little patty, and I'm going to wash my hands quickly, and then we're just going to start cooking that in the pan. I've just got a nice little sear on both sides here of the black pudding. So I'm just going to slip that onto our tray. This is all going to go back into the oven in a few moments. And I'm just going to crack a little bit of black pepper on our sausage patty. And just a dribble of oil. And this doesn't have to be super pretty. Again, this is also going to cook a lot quicker than if we were cooking sausages. We don't all have a lot of time on our hands. We want to get down the batch. It's the early morning. Cut them sausages out of the skins, squash them down in the pan. That'll be cooked in no time. And we're getting so close to the end that I'm going to get the egg on, guys, people. So I've just got a small little egg pan here. Now, I like to cook my eggs in cold oil and no water. A sort of generous amount of oil. You want it to kind of coat the bottom of the pan sort of thing. Straight in there, low heat, maybe this one. Now in that time we've just got this lovely sear on our sausage patty. So I'm just going to get that similar kind of sear on the same side, other side. Slip the egg on. It's a bit of a balancing act for the egg there because I'm using such a small pan. And I've done this so quickly, guys, that the onions we might actually end up that we're waiting for the onions here. But we will carry on and hope that they catch up with us. Oh, you know what, they're getting there. They're a knob of butter away from being ready. So I'm going to slip the mushrooms back into the oven. And then the potato files, which have just been resting nicely under this buttered paper. And the black pudding, which is just seared off. And then the sausage. Which we now have a nice bit of colour on both sides. So I'm going to flip that into the oven. A lovely fried egg is just sort of starting to cook. And I think I probably am just going to flip this over because I just want to get a little sear on the other side. Again, just so that it's not too messy and slidey as we build this thing. So that's just going to go back on the heat just for a second. That's enough. And I'm just going to put my favourite little pan back on here. And it's time to start cooking our bun. So actually I will just sort of slip all pretty good actually. That can just sit there nicely. Ah, there we go. Look, I'm just going to put that butter packet back on the top of there to keep that warm. So, speaking of butter, let's do some. So, top tip for this kind of stuff, nice knob of butter. Butter your bap first. I always do the bottom, you'll see why in a minute. And I've got this raring nice hot pan over here. And I'm just going to, that's the top, great, wonderful. So let's do the bottom first. And I think actually at this point I might just put a knob of butter into our onions just to finish them off. So first things first, we're going to get the bottom of the bun straight into this hot pan. And then we're going to get everything out and start building. So here we go. So you can see the black pudding is nice. This sausage patty's lovely and cooked, got no concerns about that. And then the potato files have just kind of puffed up a little bit once they've been in there. So there we go, look at that. Nice little bit of colour, little crust on there. So that's the bottom. We'll just let that come back up a bit more. And we'll whop the top on. And now we can start building. I'm not really sure where to start. The one thing that we're missing from a full oyster is tomato, so I'm actually just going to start, I think, with a bit of ketchup. On there. Just going to turn everything down. And then maybe let's start with a potato file. And then this lovely sausage patty. On top of that, let's do some onions. I think this is going to be quite a big boy actually. And maybe another file on top of there. And then the mushrooms are the one thing that I'm a little bit concerned might sort of make this all a bit sort of messy. So actually maybe I want the mushrooms on last. Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so. Look at that. Hello. Whoa. So we've got these beautiful glazed mushrooms. Maybe I'm forgetting to turn all of this stuff off. We don't need many of these. Just going to build this up. I've probably done enough for two. Oh, hello. I knew I'd forgotten something. Why didn't you tell me you was at home? We forgot the egg. I think really the egg should be in the middle, but we only have the option of putting it here now. Look at that. That, my friends, is a Belfast bat. My homage. We've got the slimiest things next to each other. So what I'm actually going to do is maybe just put some of these onions on, which might help all of this just stick together. I think this is going to have to be cut in half to be eaten. But there you have my homage to Sir Jim Magilton, the Belfast bat. And so I'm going to pour myself another glass of apple cider. get to the eating. Where's my bread knife? Over here. Out of the way, Jimmy. There we have it, people. My Belfast bat. We've got potato file, we've got sausage patty, onions, potato file again, black pudding, more onions, mushrooms cooked in soy, and then a fried egg on the top. So this isn't going to be the most graceful you've ever seen me, people, but I'm gonna whop it down.